What's good, King Uganda? It's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson back at it again with another interview. I'm so glad to be back with you, brothers and sisters in the Pan-African world. And today we have a very special interview, a brother I have had the opportunity to meet a few months ago here in Uganda. He's a brother that understands both the diasporan community in America and also what goes on to build a bridge in the local community here in the African continent. I'll let the brother explain who he is and what he does.
It's a pleasure hosting me, O'Shea. My name is Baker Kabanda, born and raised in Kampala, Uganda, aka the Pearl of Africa. But I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the Black Maker. I'm an author, online business strategist, but most importantly, I'm an Africaphile, very passionate about Black people all around the world. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right, give him a round of applause. And I met Brother Baker through Wooded Maya when Wooded Maya was here, and Brother Baker was able to contact me, and we had a chance to spend the day together. And we had a lot of conversations, and I've been trying to get him on to share his knowledge. He's been working with people like Akon and just connecting throughout the Black world. And we got on the conversation that a lot of times African Americans don't understand Africans, and Africans don't understand African Americans. And now we're trying to build a bridge to circumvent that. And obviously you have a book that you have on the same topic coming out pretty soon, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But let me ask you, what got you into understanding how the diaspora works? And, in your experience with getting to know that side, I mean, being in Atlanta, how long have you been there, and what got you going to America?
Okay, I've been in Atlanta for about 8 years now. I won the lottery, not the Powerball lottery. So guys, don't come knocking at my door. I won what they call the diversity visa lottery, also known as the green card lottery. So the US, every year, people apply to get the chance to come and live as permanent residents in the US by earning themselves a green card. So I did apply for that. I think it was in 2015, and I was one of the few out of the millions who applied who was able to get that opportunity to come and live here and work in the US. And when I came to the US, I got a chance to travel around. I went to a couple of states. I went to New York, I went to Florida, just checking the lay of the land. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, Atlanta is where I felt at home. Of course, first of all, I loved the weather. The weather out here in Atlanta is close to the tropical weather that I'm used to back in Africa. And being that it's the Black Mecca, there are plenty of Black people, very affluent Black people. So that was very encouraging to see people who look like me making it big here in the big air. So that's how I came to settle here in Atlanta. I got exposed to the African Americans. I got into circles of African Americans of a higher pedigree. Because normally when we think African Americans, we think of the stereotypical African American from the African standpoint. Because the African American we're exposed to back in Africa is the ones that we see in the movies, right? So it's either you're a sports personality, a LeBron, you are a Denzel Washington, a Beyonce, that's entertainment. If you're none of those, then you're a criminal, you're a drug dealer, that type of, mindset. So when I got out here, I got exposed to both sides, but primarily the side that is progressive. Okay. There's actually plenty of Black entrepreneurs out here in Atlanta and the US in general that people are not exposed to, that Africa is not exposed to. Because when Africa thinks of African Americans, like I said, it's the usual. It's either entertainment, sports, or criminals. But there's a class in between there. The professionals, lawyers, doctors, whatever, entrepreneurs who are doing phenomenally well for themselves out here. Mm-hmm. And through my interactions with them, it blew me away just how clueless they are about Africa. They are clueless.
So these people who are doing very well for themselves, and you were clueless about them. Yeah. Yeah, right. You're clueless about them. So these people who are doing very well in Atlanta, they were also clueless about what was really going on the continent.
Yep.
What were they so clueless about?
Everything. Now, like I said, most of what we know about Africa, or most of what the African Americans know about Africa, is primarily through mass media, right? What's shared on CNN, these big media platforms. And of course, again and again, they're showing corruption, they're showing wars, they're showing kids with flies on their lips when they're trying to fundraise for money, which money never even really gets to the person it's supposed to get to at the end of the day. But yes, that's the image that is shown out there. And if you're out here in the US and that's all you're getting exposed to every other day, I mean, it discourages you to even develop the interest to find out more, right? Mm-hmm. Imagine, I don't know much about Iraq. The only thing I know about Iraq is it's messed up, it's war. I don't know much about Afghanistan. I'm not even interested in finding out. Why? Because the perception I have is, the whole place is messed up. So the same happens for Africa. I live here in the US, but I'll tell you what, when I stopped watching TV. Because every time I was watching TV, I would get there's Ebola happening here, there's this happening there, there's a war here. Man, it just gets so crazy. The last time I came to Uganda, I almost canceled my trip. There was
to Uganda?
To Uganda, my birthplace.
What?
I almost canceled. Because I was seeing too much information about Ebola. It felt as though when you arrive at the airport, there is a welcome crew that welcomes you and hands you a bag of Ebola. Welcome to Uganda. Like, for real.
Right.
That's how bad it was. So I had to call people on the ground. I'm like, are you guys serious? Are you serious? It's safe. And when I actually came, there wasn't a single sign whatsoever that there was even any type of Ebola happening in the country. Whereas, true, there were cases that were happening in Mubende on the outskirts of the city, the capital city. But those were isolated cases, just a few people. But what we're receiving in terms of information here in the Western world, it was a barrage. It felt as if the world is about to come to an end in Uganda. So that's primarily the information we get, and that's primarily the information the African Americans get. Now imagine someone who has never been to that place. When you get bombarded with this information again and again, I mean, there's no reason as to why you should even delve deeper to find out whether there's anything good. And unfortunately, when it comes to mass media, good news is not good news. Bad news is what actually makes good news. They're not about to show people at the beach having a good time in Kampala, in a club or whatever. That doesn't make the news. What makes the news is if there's a shooting somewhere, if there's, disease, and inevitably that gets to you at some point. So when people out here think of Africa, it's doom and gloom. Nobody thinks of boom and bloom when it comes to Africa. It's disease and corruption and the whole 9 yards. And it's not any different from the people who are thriving out here in the US, the African Americans, they're actually too busy. They're too busy building businesses and stuff. So they don't have the time and patience to try to dig through the rubble to figure out the truth. And unfortunately, Africa is not doing a phenomenal job telling its own story, right? So the African story is seen through the through the lens of the white media houses that tell the African story. And because of that, people get a skewed image of Africa. And when they get a skewed image of Africa, nobody's interested, So that's it, pretty much, yeah.
So now, in your journey, because you moved to the United States, coming from Uganda, I'm assuming you went to the United States to get more opportunity for yourself, to do more. But what got you deciding to, because I guess you didn't have to be in the path you're on now. What was a deciding moment that you said, okay, I need to be somewhat of a referee in between the two parties. I understand what's going on. What gave you the spark to say, okay, I want to build this bridge between the diaspora in the continent of Africa? Okay.
First of all, when I got the green card, I was doing pretty well for myself back in Uganda. I had broken into the circles, upper middle class circles. So I was doing okay. I had a Mercedes-Benz, I had a nice apartment. I was doing pretty okay. So that's around the time when I got the green card. When I got the green card, of course, the general narrative is America is the land where miracles happen, all dreams come true. I got the green card. I was a little skeptical about making the transition because honestly, I was kind of comfortable at the time back home in Uganda. And I was also afraid of the unknown. I'm like, okay, I'm going into this place all by myself to start from scratch. So that was pretty daunting for me. And believe you me, do you know who convinced me? to actually make the transition?
Who?
Lil Wayne.
What? Lil Wayne? Okay. How was that?
I was home seated watching TV, and on came a music video, and Lil Wayne was talking about making it rain, money falling from the sky, and he was like, there's too much money out here, I'm gonna need an umbrella. I'm like, sign me up. I was on the next flight.
Okay, to America.
So to America, and of course, my expectations were really, really high, and that's the same for most people in Africa. When we are in Africa, we think that the moment you land in America, money grows on trees. Like Beyonce is gonna be waiting for you at the airport with a bag full of cash and keys to your Ferrari. So that's the mindset, and you ride off into the sunset. But that's not really the case. Of course, you come here, you have to figure it out. You have to grind. It's not easy making it out here. But yes, I came, starting from the bottom, hustled. At some point, actually, I was living in my car. That's a story I've never even told anybody. Things got tighter. I ended up living in my car for some time. But along the way, I got to network. One of my strengths is I'm very good at networking. So I networked my way into circles of African Americans who were doing well for themselves, the entrepreneur circles, right? So when I got in with them, of course, we began talking about different things. I was telling them about Africa. They were asking me questions. But honestly, through my interactions with them, I got exposed to, I don't want to use ignorance, but let's say clueless. They were completely clueless about what Africa is, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are. Okay. So from these conversations with them, I began enlightening them about Africa, while they were also enlightening me about America and the African American plight. Because I see. I didn't know. I mean, like I said, all I knew was, like every African, it's just sports, entertainment, and blah, blah, blah. So they begin schooling me on the African American plight. They take me all the way back, slavery, Jim Crow, the burning down of Black Wall Street, the Tuskegee experiment, the whole 9 yards. I'm like, wow, I did not know all this actually happened. And trust me, most Africans do not know, right? So when I realized that, well, these people are out here, they have the networks, they have access to capital, they have the technology, access to technology, and Africa is out there. It's a blue ocean. It's at ground level. Opportunities are really rife for anybody who is open and daring enough to take the plunge. So I began engaging them in topics and telling them what opportunities are available, even besides the mining industry. Because again, when they think of Africa, the only thing that stands out is minerals. Oh, there are minerals, there's gold everywhere, but there are plenty of other opportunities that people can actually tap into. So it's through those conversations with the lawyers here, the doctors here, that class, entrepreneurs in the online space, real estate space. I'm telling them, hey, you're in the real estate space here, you can do Airbnb in Africa, easy. There are places that have beautiful landscape. You can get a beach front property and own it and rent it out to people who are touring. I told them tourists actually go to Africa in large numbers, but unfortunately, it's not the African Americans going primarily. It's white tourists that are going to Africa. So I'm telling them, guys, there's plenty of opportunity in literally every industry you can think of. Manufacturing. I mean, look at you. You're in Africa, you're in Uganda, you start a podcast, and look where you are now in a very short period of time. In about 5 years or so, you're among the top podcasters on the continent, right? Had you been here, you would have been flexing muscles with a Joe Rogan. You know?
that is absolutely true. To tell you the truth, and the thing about it is this: like when we started Kinganda, the Repat podcast was a part of the channel. We actually quit the podcast for, I would say, about 1.5 years, and then the opportunity was still so great we were able to come back. And just this last 4 to 5 months, had we've already been continuing to do it, I would have already been retired by now. That's a true story. I believe.
There we go. I would have had enough money and opportunity by now. To just be like,
I probably don't need to work today if I don't really want to, or something like that. So that is absolutely true. Let me ask you this though, brother, and you understand that we have people who are interested in Africa and there's some on the fence, but me and you have had some candid conversations about some of the countries that I feel are doing somewhat of a great job of getting the diaspora involved. Ghana is out there, they're swinging the bat heavily. There's Sierra Leone also trying. But then when you see there is nothing that really brings some of our people, even Ugandan Americans, they watch our show. I get emails from them. They say, hey, I didn't know this was going on in Uganda. I've been back home for 15 years. How do we do things? And it seems like a lot of our governments on the continent have not made somewhat of a landing space for some of our people to, number one, get involved. How do we redevelop? Because we always say, come back to Africa, redevelop the continent, invest in Africa. But the big question is how do people get involved in transparent business? How people get involved in transparent relationships, especially those people who are not like yourself, who are from, the central region in Kampala, and your way around and you have friends here. People like me, it tends to be very difficult also, but it is fruitful. So it's like, it's easier to keep my money in America and do things because I just don't know how to get involved in what's going on the continent. What would you say to those people that would have that position?
Yeah, true. First of all, governments really never develop nations. Nations are primarily developed by entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs take matters in their hands. They're daring. They take the leap of faith. They follow the path least followed, and they go out there and make things happen. So Africa right now, the best kinds of people who should be coming to Africa right now are the builders, people of the entrepreneur mindset. Unfortunately, my observation is primarily people who are coming through are the romantics. People who have had Africa, Wakanda, whoa, and they're just excited, right? But like relocating to any place is not easy. I relocated from Africa to the US. The US is a developed nation. It's the number one economy in the world, $26 trillion. One would imagine once you get here, everything will be, a walk in the park. But that's not the case. Now imagine you're not moving to US, but you're moving to an African country. African countries are still very young nations. They only got independence, 65 years ago? Ghana, 1950 something. Most of these countries are roughly 60 years or so, right? The US has been independent for 247 years. That's quite a head start. But I came here and I struggled, right? So my advice for people who are trying to go to Africa, first and foremost, you need to just visit. You need to have a reconnaissance trip. Just go and just check out the lay of the land, right? First, then network. Try to get in touch with people who are already in the country and people who are doing things that are kind of similar to what you're doing, or people who have the same level of perception, right? If you're a lawyer in the US, you need to look for a lawyer in Uganda who is successful by Ugandan standards, right? Once you network with that kind of person, they can kind of give you an overall picture of the lay of the land, right? If you are into real estate, network, and the internet is very powerful. We can leverage social media to try and network with people who are in, different areas of expertise. Of course, when you travel to a country, whatever country it is, I recommend rather than just go for a safari and all that good stuff, take time out to go to events. Where you can possibly meet people who are in your same line of business. Do speaking engagements for free. Look for, a group of people interested in real estate. Go and speak about real estate in the American market. Trust me, they'll give you the platform. They will be eager to know how the real estate game is in the American market. Now, by you speaking about it, first of all, you position yourself as an expert in your field. But secondly, you attract people who are interested in that particular subject. Now, those are the people who will actually give you insight into that particular industry at the local level. So the internet is very resourceful. LinkedIn is very resourceful, but definitely visiting and going out there to Rotary clubs, to schools, to universities, go and teach what you know, right? Actually, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm encouraging people to create online courses in their areas of expertise. So if you're doing podcasts, create an online training teaching people how to start a podcast, for instance, right? Now through that, people will actually get to know you. People in your space will get to know you for that. And through that, you'll make the right connections with the right people, such that when you get there, at least, you have a little bit of a soft landing.
Okay. A little bit of a soft landing. Now, let me kind of talk about also this. That was a great advice. Some of the brothers and sisters, obviously, I know you live in Atlanta, and I know we never really highlight the fact that you do get a lot of Africans and African Americans who do work together in Atlanta and DC. A lot of people are doing very well, but we typically hear a lot of the strife that continues to happen primarily between the African American community, the Nigerian American community. There's some hostility there. It has been growing for a certain amount of years. It's not so much so that somebody's going to fight, but you could just tell that, all right, we go to church over here, you guys do your thing over there, and there's some little back and forth. So when I talk to African Americans, and you always kind of hear the idea, well, these Africans don't really like us like that in America, so they're not going to like me in Africa. What has been your experience with living in Atlanta, and how have you interacted with the African American community? And did you ever feel like they didn't like you, or do you feel like that kind of stuff?
It's an issue of communication, really. There's a stigma in between these two tribes, the African American tribe and the African tribe. When people are leaving Africa, coming to the US, they're told lots of things. Of course, you're told don't mix with the African Americans. They're criminals, and rightfully so. Do you know why? Because all that people in Africa see every time you switch on the TV is an African American in handcuffs being taken to a jail or being, put into a police car. But unfortunately, we do not know the dynamics behind all of that, right? People in Africa don't know the background. Why are very many African Americans being, taken into jails, right? So because you don't know the background, you only see the front end every time you switch on the TV. That's what you're seeing. Naturally, you become worried or fearful of that particular group of people. If you're not seeing them as criminals, of course, you're hearing stories. And of course, not just hearing, you're watching on TV, because that's not just it. You're watching stories in the movies, absentee fathers, African Americans are impregnating women and leaving them on their own. So all those kinds of things naturally draw you away from those people. Because if I had a daughter, I wouldn't want my daughter to get involved with someone who's going to impregnate her and leave her, to fend for herself. Now, if I'm seeing this on TV, on movies all day long, I'm naturally going to be, wary, and I'm going to advise my daughter not to interact with those people. So what needs to happen is there needs to be more candid conversations between both parties, so that we can figure out, okay, what's your problem? Why are you afraid of us? Or why don't you like us, quote unquote? Where does this stem from? We focus on the what instead of finding out the why behind the what, right? On the front, we see, okay, there's friction between these people. But the question is, what is the reason as to why this friction is in place? There's a movie, I forget the title. Was it Sugar Hill or something? Where Wesley Snipes was the lead actor in that one. Mm-hmm. And there was a scene in there where Wesley Snipes was called a cutter. Have you heard of the phrase a cutter?
Of course, yes.
There we go. Now, this was a phrase in a movie, right? But it really it spread like wildfire, and already there were sentiments that there's friction between these two communities. Now, when these things begin manifesting or showing up in mass media platforms, it just perpetuates the stereotype that those guys do not like you, But the truth of the matter is, Africans are wary of African Americans because of the stories that they've been told about the African Americans, and the African Americans are wary of the Africans. I mean, from my interactions with them, they say, first of all, when Africans come here, man, they have a dog mentality. They are out here to grind, They have that immigrant mentality of, I gotta make it happen for my people. Of course, the African Americans are on their home turf, so they're a little bit laid back, right? And of course, they've been through a lot, so they don't actually grind as much as the Africans. So even if it's a job, the Africans are willing to work longer hours, they're willing to work for less pay. So they kind of make the African Americans look bad. So if it's a white boss, you'll see, these Africans are doing a good job. For you, you're just lazy. So all these small nuances further widen the gap. But the truth of the matter is, Africans and African Americans just don't know much about each other. If they can sit around on the same table, have conversations, candid conversations, they'll get to realize that what really divides, they have more in common than they have apart. And it's in their best interest to bridge the gap. Because divided, we are weak as a people. There are just 50 million African Americans here in the US. The population is, US has a population of 336 million people. So 50 million is just a drop in the ocean, right? So it's imperative that the African Americans synergize with the Afro-Caribbean, they synergize with the Africans to build number. There's power in numbers. Even if you started a business, if African Americans are patronizing your business, you have the Caribbeans coming through, that's more business, that's more money. And if they can take it to Africa, now that changes the ball game. Because now Africa is 1.4 billion people. That's a huge market.
A huge market.
That's a huge market. Much as there's a narrative that, Africa is poor, people live on less than $1 a day. But this is a huge market. Even if you just got 10%, just 10% of 1.4 billion people. Even if you got 1% is 14 million people. Imagine if you got 14 million people to pay you $1 a day for whatever product, service, or idea you have. How much money would you make?
It's a lot of money.
It's $14 million.
Every day.
Every day, if you can sell it every day. That's what the Chinese are doing. They're coming to Africa, they're selling cheap products, $1, $2, but it's a big market, right? So the numbers add up. It's a numbers game. We just need to get to know more about each other. We just need to be more open-minded about each other. Of course, there is still bad blood that Africans in one way or the other participated in the whole slavery expedition. That's still in the subconscious of African Americans. Some African Americans have not really overcome that, right? But truth be told, first of all, we need to work with each other. But secondly, the Africa that we have now, this is a new crop of young Africans. 60% of the population is below the age of 30, right? And these Africans, they're actually even very clueless about their own history. And it's by design, because the education system that we follow primarily in Africa is an education system that was set by the British if you're Anglophone. It's an education system that was set by the French if you're Francophone. And they don't teach us about our very own history, let alone African American history, right? So there have to be platforms where more and more of these conversations are being had, which is why your platform is doing a phenomenal job. You are at a unique vantage point. You see the best of both worlds, right? You know what's happening in the African American side of things. You are boots on the ground in Africa, so you see what's happening on the African side of things. So as more and more of these conversations continue happening, we are going to realize that actually what keeps us apart is, as small issues that we definitely can work out, and we definitely need to work out.
Need to.
Yeah.
Let me build on that point, because we met each other, I think at least twice on your last trip.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think our podcast was just now starting to come back, and I always will see people when they look at the Pan-African Dating Show, or they'll look at the podcast and they're like, wow, this is really high quality work that you guys are doing. And I always tell them that these are like young kids from Uganda that are doing this, and they're not young kids, they're adults, but they're
technically they're young. Yeah.
So when you show Uganda and they go, wait a minute, no, that's not a person from here that's doing that. I'm like, yes, it is a person from here that's doing that. And they're like, no, we can't believe that Ugandans are producing that, even the Pan-African Dating Show.
Yeah.
That the Ugandans are not producing that. And what I've learned that when I first came here, I will say this, and I've never admitted this, I was like, when I'm in America, I saw like a lot of Africans were very like Ethiopian, Somalians, they were like really, 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 really with it. We're kind of lax, right? So when I'm here, I'm like this, right? I'm like, let's get to it.
The immigrant mentality.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about like, man, why does the waiter drag her feet? Why are they slow? And again, what you talked about was, what is the what behind the why? Is that what you said?
What is the why behind the what?
Why behind the what, right? So why? So I mean, oh man, well, what are these people doing? You know what I mean? These people, this appears to be like, I keep coming across people that are in this mentality where maybe they're a little bit entitled, they're lazy, right? I was kind of coming to that conclusion. And then I heard to realize like, oh, that person's at work, they're working for literally $80 a month and their bills are $100. That person doesn't see any hope in this particular job. They don't see any hope. They've lost all hope. They're just here because they want to be able to contribute to the, you know, they don't want to be at home all day looking like they're not doing anything. So they would rather pay to go to work. And once I realized that, I was like, oh, what if we try to incentivize our people a little bit more with our profits? What would we get? That was the issue. It was a lack of incentivization. And once we are able to achieve that and talk to them, say, hey, what is it you need? You know, a lot of times Ugandans and Africans in general tend to be a little bit standoffish about how they really feel. They're not really so direct about how they feel. But once we're able to have that conversation, and what do you really need for us to do this? And they started making changes to Kabanda that I would have never made. Like, as much as people want to say, oh man, you did a great job going there. I mean, as much as if I've helped them, they've helped me too. And it was just understanding like you said, the why, right? Behind the what. And that was just that. And now you see why, okay, maybe some people are not so excited about developing for the private sector or coming up with new ideas because they feel like they're not going to be heard, or that idea is not going to come to life, or somebody's going to steal their idea and they'll never get that idea funded. So they stop trying to make changes that will help the private sector. So they just keep it to themselves. They don't want it because they feel, what use am I if I'm going to try to help, you know, this local economy here and I have ideas, I'm not going to get any reward for it. My life is not going to change. But in America, if you do that, your life does change, right? So we have a lack of incentivization on the continent, and that's why a lot of our brightest people have given up on the society. And
actually, not just giving up, they end up leaving. The brightest end up leaving.
Yep. So, and when you start to think about like, why is this person's behavior like this? It all makes sense. And just like the African Americans, why is their behavior like that? It's just years and years and years of being, you know what I mean, treated in that particular system. And even though, you know, African Americans think, well, you know, you got lights and you have running water and you have free education, but it doesn't mean that when you have been beat down and your group has been beat down where you don't own anything, you know, you're taught not to work with your people, and vice versa. So you brought up a great point. Let me ask you this, because of your work, because you have a new book coming out. I believe I have the photo of it here. Have you seen change in these conversations in the last few years, bringing the diaspora forward, and if so, why?
Change in what sense? Which conversation? The conversation happening online?
The conversation and the activity of the diaspora being more interested in Africa and developing as a group in the last 5 years. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah. And I think the lead catalyst was the 2019 year of return in Ghana.
Okay.
That was a major catalyst, along with the Black Panther. I believe those two were really big catalysts, because African Americans have not been proud of their Africanness, because the truth of the matter is there's nothing that has been portrayed as worth being proud of in Africa, right? Because if all you're seeing is war, disease, and whatever, nobody would want to associate with a group of losers, right? But when Wakanda showed up, it portrayed that, wait a minute, there is a fictitious place that is actually very ahead in terms of technology. It has resources and all that kind. So that created a little bit of curiosity and a little bit of pride, because I know when it was showing here in Atlanta, people were out dressed in African garb. People were so proud. I mean, it was a whole array of people just excited about Africa for the very first time. And then when the year of return happened, celebrities went to Ghana. And one thing I've realized, African Americans are very celebrity oriented. They follow celebrities. What celebrities say or do is what the African American, they're the royalty, you know, of African American society. So when they went to Ghana, of course, they have social media following and all that type of stuff. So attention was put on Ghana, right? And they were out there, they were showing all these nice places that they were hanging out in and all that good stuff. So naturally, people began getting more and more excited and curious. Of course, then there's been a rise of online influencers, podcasts, people like yourself, people like my brother Dynasty Uhuru, based in Atlanta, Search for Uhuru, and a number of other people who are actually living on the continent right now. So those people are giving people faith. They're like, wait a minute, O'Shea is actually living there. He's been there for 5 years plus. Okay, I think it's livable. I think wild animals don't roam the streets, or else they would have mauled him long time ago, right?
Very true.
I guess there's running water. I guess there's a house he's living in. Because to this day, people think there are no houses in Africa, no running water, no internet. Like, it's that sad, right? So
I met you at the country club. If I'm not mistaken, we met at the country club.
At the country club, yep.
Which I had my favorite classic double espresso.
Yes,
so,
sir. Sir.
Yeah, we met at the country club, and I wanted to say also that you're doing an excellent job. Just having the heart. I believe you left Uganda. You went. Did you go to South Africa after here?
Yeah, I went to South Africa. I went to South Africa for a couple of days. Yeah,
a couple of days. Okay, and you just zoom. You're in and out, and I saw your interview with Akon, and to do what you do, or even me being here, it's not an easy life. You have a lot of people that are detracting. People are saying that Pan-Africanism is dead. What keeps you going when you hear the detractors about Pan-Africanism is dead? Africa is too corrupt. Africa just won't make it. Africa can't change. People always tell me, hey, this is Uganda, all the time. I even heard that phrase before. This is Africa. This is Uganda.
The truth of the matter is, first of all, from an entrepreneurial background, I feed on challenges. So for me, challenges are actually the opportunity, because anybody who shows up and solves a given challenge, guess what? They get rewarded handsomely. So you don't want to be in a place that doesn't have challenges, because you won't have anything to do. So if you go to a place like Africa, if there's no running water, you provide the running water. Now you've solved a problem that is affecting a big percentage of the population, then you get paid for it. If there is no podcast talking about a particular topic, once you create it, you solve a particular problem, you get paid handsomely for it. So for me, I honestly, I feed on challenges. I like challenges, and I don't believe in naysayers. Once I conceive an idea and I believe it, I know by the grace of God I can be able to achieve it. That's how I've been able to, navigate life. And that's the entrepreneurial mindset. All these people who do great things, the Elon Musks of this world, the guy is trying to build a city in outer space. As ridiculous as it sounds, he can envision it. And what we need to appreciate is that not all people are visionaries. Most people have eyesight. They see what is already in existence. Very few people are visionaries. A visionary uses their mind to see. They see things before they come into existence. When somebody walks to a vacant piece of land, all they'll see will be the little bushes around, but someone else will actually see a hotel. He'll see a 5-star hotel. He'll see where the swimming pool is. He can envision the people walking in and out. So two people can see the exact same thing, but come up with a different conclusion. So Africa right now is for visionaries. It's for people who can see what other people cannot see yet. Africa is a diamond in the rough. The diamond is there. You just need to do a little bit of digging and clean it up a little bit, and you'll have yourself a diamond.
You got me so, brother. Let's talk about the new book, and I'll have I believe SPK is editing this. I'll have him put the book up here, and it's the book title, very beautiful cover. I believe the cover says fostering business between African Americans and Africa, bridging the gap. What is this book going to, if I'm going to buy this book, what is this book going to teach me that I did not know?
Everything. I literally wrote that as the Bible of relations between Africans and African Americans. I went deep into unearthing the reasons why there is a gap between our relationship. I went deep to explore how Africans are in reality vis-a-vis how they are projected by mass media. I went deep in how the African Americans really are and who they really are as a people, their history, and how they've gotten to where they are today. I highlighted some people who have done amazing things on the African side of things, some people who have done excellent things on the American side of things. So we are literally bridging that gap. We're trying to show that there are people out here who are doing amazing things. There are also people out here who are doing amazing things. What's keeping these two people from coming together? And together they can create something that is even bigger. So we went back a little bit. I had to do a little bit of research. I talked to a number of African Americans. I got their insights on their concerns. I talked to Africans. I talked to people who have actually taken the leap of faith and relocated to Africa. What are the challenges they've experienced? And I try to address those. What are the opportunities that they've seen? I've also tried to highlight that. So basically, this is going to be the Bible for anybody interested in Africa. You see, online platforms touch on some of these topics, but they are scattered. So I decided to put everything together in one document. And it's very funny. First, I was looking for a book that I could point people to so they can learn more about Africa. Because people were asking me questions. I got tired of repeating myself, saying the same thing every, oh, there are houses, oh, there's running water, oh, there's internet. I just got tired. So I was like, okay, where can I point these people where they can get all this information in one go? I looked around, I searched Amazon, I searched everywhere. I couldn't find anything. So I was like, you know what? If it's not there, I may as well go ahead and create something. So at the airport here in Atlanta, they say if you see something, do something. If you see like a bag around at the airport and trying to protect from terrorism and stuff like that. But instead of seeing something and saying something, I decided to take it a step further to actually do something. I sat down, I put in the work, I put in the research, and put together a document that tells Africans pretty much everything they need to know about the African Americans, and also tells the African Americans pretty much what they need to know about the Africans from a cultural standpoint, as a people, from an opportunity standpoint. And hopefully, my goal, my dream is to see these people, to erode the friction that exists between these two people that we spoke about earlier, and to see these people do business together. Because honestly speaking, there's plenty of opportunity. People going to Africa, some will go to Africa for sentimental reasons, connection with the motherland. But even that aside, the Chinese don't come to Africa for sentimental reasons. They come to Africa because there are business opportunities. So those who are not interested in the sentimentality of it, they can actually get to know how to get to Africa. The question that you asked earlier, how does somebody make the connections in a land that you don't know anybody? I touched on that. I touched on where people can access funding. There are programs here in the US like Prosper Africa, where the US government is availing funds for people or entrepreneurs or businesses interested in expanding into the African market. Right now, there's a lot of competition between US and China over Africa. And because of that, the US government is availing resources, but most of these resources, I doubt if the African Americans know about them. But I went ahead and highlighted all these other things that they can be able to tap into. And that's pretty much it. It's a must read for any African American, every African, and everybody of Black descent, African descent, be it in the Caribbean, be it in Jamaica, be it in Britain. This is a must read.
All right. Well, definitely when our brother Baker puts it out, we're definitely going to give him some free promotion here on the Kinganda YouTube channel. We are glad to be a resource for him as he has been for us. I was able to meet brother Latani. I want to give him a shout out. Powerful brother. I was able to meet him. That is a wizard right there. I'm trying to see if you, but I don't think he wants to do the camera thing, but it was a great guy. You to go by and see him. The guy is just as I kept asking, I'm like, bro, are you sure you're like not an African American disguised as a Ugandan or something?
Yeah, he's a very deep brother. And when I think of him, I think of Dr. Sebi, right? Mm-hmm. Dr. Sebi, he was big in naturopathy back in the days before he passed on. He was sharing lots of insight about how people can heal themselves, how the body can naturally heal itself. So Brother Lotan is very deep when it comes to health and wellness, how to use natural ways of healing the body. Of course, even the scientific ways, because for him, it's a combination of the natural aspect of things plus cutting edge technology. Right now, the boys down in Silicon Valley, the Peter Diamandises, the Tony Robbins, they are working towards longevity. Jeff Bezos is investing heavily in projects to do with longevity. People don't want to die. They've made too much money. They don't want to leave it. So there's lots of cutting edge science, stem cell technology, how people can live longer. So those are areas that he's very, very knowledgeable about. Cancer. People are dying of cancer, north, left, right, and center. That's an area that he's very, very knowledgeable about. And funny enough, most of the things that cause cancer are preventable. Mm-hmm. It's a lifestyle disease primarily, But unfortunately, this is information that is not out there, and hopefully we shall get him to come out someday and share some more so that our people can benefit from his wisdom.
Okay, yeah. Shout out to Brother Latanya. Well, guys, that's Brother Baker Kabanda. I think he'll be on YouTube here in a short while. I'll leave his information if you'd like to contact him and get in contact with him. Great brother. I was able to meet him when he was here. When Wood and Maya was here, I believe it was in March. So hopefully we'll be able to see him in person. And thank you so much for coming, brother. I know it was almost like about 2 months to get you on here, man. So I'm honored to have you on here. And guys, subscribe, hit the bell. Peace out.
All right.